Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do a quick video on how to complete the tire maintenance lab at home. What I'm going to show you today, there's going to be a couple things different than how we'd normally do them in the shop here, simply because if you're doing this at home, you may not have all the tools and equipment here that we have here at the school. That being said, you can still do everything and submit this lab. So this lab is found on Google Classroom. To submit it, it's actually a Google form. So I would suggest having that Google form open, or at least a piece of paper out in front of you while you're doing this, just to keep yourself straight. However, I'm going to actually talk through how to do this without showing you how to submit that. If you need help submitting it, let me know at a later date. I can help you out. First and foremost, I've got my PPE, I've got my safety glasses. I also have a set of work gloves just in case. Sometimes these tires can be a little dirty and get some black stains on them, or who knows what, based on what's on your tire. But I got all the proper PPE. So let's get started. We'll talk about some basic tools, some parts of our tire, and then we'll get into it. All right, so for this lab, most of these labs that I'm going to show you, I'm going to be showing you on my own vehicle here. This is my 94 Ford Ranger, Larry the Danger Ranger. He's got a lot of miles on him, but he's paid for, and he gets me down the road. So this is the vehicle that I'm going to be using for you. Your vehicles at home, they should be properly licensed and insured. That's the case on here. Any vehicle that comes into the shop here has to be properly licensed and insured. So keep that in mind. So we're going to look at this specific tire right here. In the end, you're going to do this lab. There's stuff to submit for each individual tire. However, I'm just going to show you on this one tire. It's worth noting, before we get too far into this, let's just take a step back and show you my work area. Now, when we have a room full of cars in here, normally I will have a tool chest pulled out from the tool room. However, today, just to keep myself organized, I've got all my tools laid out on a table. I've got my vehicle here. I'm ready to go. I would encourage you to do the same. Get all of your tools set and ready before you start. That way you're not having to rush around and go find something in the middle of your lab. So take some time to think through what you're doing, and it'll pay dividends later on down the road. So basic things we're going to do here today for our tire. Okay, first thing is we're going to check our tire inflation pressure. In the video that Eric the car guy showed, he talked about tire inflation pressure. You've got to have the right inflation in order for your gas mileage to be proper, or at least for your gas mileage to be decent and for your tires to operate properly. So we're going to check for tire pressure. Secondly, we're going to check for tire tread depth. And thirdly, we're going to check for any unusual wear patterns. Okay, so let's start with tire pressure. Okay, to do that, the easiest way to do it is just with one of these little gauges. All right, this is a very simple gauge. This is one that I think I went down to Menards and bought it for $5 or $10. In all of my vehicles at home, this vehicle and my wife's vehicle, I have one of these in the glove box. This is the exact model that was in our glove box. It's just one of those things to have on hand. These work pretty simply. They have a gauge here that shows pounds per square inch of pressure, PSI, or they will have a KPA. That's a metric designation. I'd have to talk to our physics teachers to understand what those are. In America, or in the United States here, we talk through pounds per square inch. What that means is that every square inch in that tire, how much pressure is being placed by the air. All right, so that's one way. The second way we can do it is using a tool like this. Now, this is a really nice gun, okay? It is an inflation tool, okay? So we can use it to pump more air back into the tires, as well as with a tire pressure gauge, okay? PSI. Now, this one, I want to say last year when I bought it, it was around $30 or $40 down at Runnings. If you have this, great, use it, because it's a really nice tool. However, most people at home will not have this. Okay. Other considerations to take depends on your vehicle. So if you have some bigger trucks, you're going to find that they have really high inflation pressures. All right, so like at home, I have a Ford Expedition. okay? Essentially an SUV on a Ford F-150 frame. Those tires, the max tire inflation pressure is 50 PSI. Well, if we look at our gauge here, it only goes up to 50. Okay? In years past with students, we've had some issues with that where the inflation pressures are a lot higher than the standard gauge. You may have to go out and buy a special gauge for that. They make digital tire inflation pressure gauges. Those are really nice. Just be aware of that. So before we do anything with tire inflation pressure, we should probably know what our vehicle has. Now, from experience, I know that I like to have my tires inflated to about 35 PSI. A couple different places you can find that. In Eric the Car Guy's video, he talked about on the door jamb. Okay, we can also find it on the actual tire itself. And this one might be upside down here. Okay, here it is. We'll see it says 35 PSI max pressure. So in the summer, that'll be around 35. In the winter, when it's colder, that'll jump down to about 32 PSI. All right, so now that we know what tire pressure we need, we can go about figuring out where our tires are at. All right, so on our tire, we'll have this valve stem. This is the connection between the inside of the tire and the outside. On the inside, we have what's called a Schrader valve. There's a little valve that keeps the pressure inside. When you unscrew this cap, hang on to it, don't lose it. They are pretty cheap to buy, but you hate to have to replace parts. Okay? You're gonna take your tire pressure gauge and you're going to lightly push it straight on with your valve stem. Okay? You shouldn't hear any air leaking out, and you should see the bottom of our gauge pop back out. Okay? Ooh, that's not good. We're at about a little under 30 PSI. Yeah, a little under 30 PSI. Just to be sure, let's just double check it again. Okay, a little under 30 PSI. So this tire needs just a little shot of air. While I'm adding that, the nice thing about these inflation tools with the gauge on them is you can tell how much tire pressure is in there as you're filling it. Okay. So basics on inflation, you're gonna do that for all 4 tires and submit it in on the Google form. Next thing we're going to look at is tire tread depth and tread condition. Okay. Now tread depth is really critical because without that tread depth, we run into all sorts of problems with maintaining contact with the road. Okay. The main issue or the main job of tires is essentially to keep that connection between your vehicle and the road. And if you've ever driven on an icy road or with really worn tires through the rain, you've probably gotten a feel for what that is when you lose connection with the road. You start sliding. Okay. Now modern tires are designed to be able to drive in those conditions. Okay, particularly rainy, wet roads. They're designed to take the water and shoot it off to the side so your tire can maintain connection. However, when your tire tread gets worn, that water can't escape, and so we have issues where we get what's called hydroplaning. Essentially, there's nowhere for that water to go, and so the tires will end up skating over the water. And so tire tread is really critical. Okay, so to check the depth, we can use a couple different tools. Okay, we can go out and buy this tool right here. This is called a tire tread depth gauge. Okay, in the United States, we measure tire tread depth in 30 of an inch. So we can see here, we have 3-sided scale, 30 of an inch. Okay, good tires are generally considered 2 30-seconds. So when there's less than 2 30-seconds of tire tread left, it's time to replace your tires. Okay, the metric system does this same thing in millimeters. Okay, now let's say you don't have one of these tire tread depth gauges. You can also use this thing called a penny. Okay, by inserting Abraham Lincoln upside down into the tire tread, when his head is completely exposed, that means there's less than 2 30-seconds of an inch of tread left, okay, and it needs to be replaced. So if you have one of these tools at home, great, let's use it. If not, I want you to use a penny to determine your tire tread depth. Okay, Now, if we were doing this lab in school, we'd use a tire depth gauge and you would tell me how much tread is left on your tires. Okay? However, being that you may not have this, I simply want to know if your tire tread depth is greater or less than 2/32 of an inch. Okay? Now, in the Eric the Car Guy video, he also talked about these things called wear bars. Okay? If you look and feel in the depth, in the tread, okay, you will feel bars. Okay, there's one right here. Okay, you can see it right there. Okay, that bar is raised slightly above the bottom of the tread depth. Okay, when that bar is exposed, that's also a measure of your 2/32. It's time to replace it. Okay. So let's use our tire tread depth gauge. To use it, we are simply going to line it up in the tread, push this cap down until it doesn't push down anymore, the black end laying flat on the tread, and we're going to pull it out and read it. Now, that metal piece that came out, that is a measure of how deep your tread is. And if we look at our gauge, we can see I've got, let's focus it in here a little bit. We can see I've got 12/32 of tread left. 12/32. Okay, I've got plenty of tread left. Okay, we can also do the same thing with Abraham Lincoln. We can see he is well below that tread depth. He's okay. And thirdly, we saw our wear bar in there. Okay, there it is right there. We have plenty of tread depth left. Okay, basics on checking tread depth. You're gonna do that for all 4 tires. The last thing you're going to do for all 4 tires is just a simple visual inspection to determine any wear pattern issues. Okay, so some common ones that you can find here that we can see on our vehicle might be some sidewall wearing. Here I must have hit a curb. Okay, if these tires are old and breaking apart, you might see some bulging out on the sidewall here. All right. Both of those are indication that you may want to replace your tires. Last year, when I replaced these tires, all 4 were starting to bulge out on the sidewall. That was a big issue for me. At that time, I didn't trust these tires to go more than 55 miles an hour. Now I got new ones and we're set to go. Here are some other examples of tire tread wear patterns. I wanted to show you in our book, we're looking at page 1469 here, just because it's easier to show these in the book rather than on my tire. If we were in school, it would be a heck of a lot easier to get a good visual inspection, either just where the tire is or by taking the tire off the car. Obviously at home you don't have, or I'm telling you to not take your tires off and to lift your car up because not everyone will have that capability. So here's a list of our basic issues. Okay, we can have some different wear patterns. So this first one, feathering. We can see it's slightly worn across that tread width. Okay, it's slightly worn awkwardly off to one side. Okay, probably an alignment issue. Okay, 2 more common ones are over and under inflation. If your tire is overinflated, what it causes this tire to do, here's what it looks like. It causes these edges of that tire to bow up, okay? And so the tire contact is much less, so it wears in the center. Underinflation is exactly the opposite. Because it bulges out, more tread contacts the road, and so the outer edges get worn more. Proper inflation is right here. Other issues might include one-sided wear. Okay, if it's worn significantly, if it's worn significantly on one side of the tire, as we can see here, we have an alignment issue. Okay, too much inside or outside tread is being worn down. It's not set right, so we need to get our car aligned, specifically touching up on the camber. Okay, cupping. Okay, essentially what cupping looks like is it'll look like around that tire, little circles are intermittently taken out of that tire. They're worn down. Okay, this one is a little less common, but we do see it. We may have out of balance tires, so those tires are bouncing as we're going down the road, or we may have issues with our shock absorption system. I've seen one trailer at my church. My church has a trailer. It's a solid axle trailer, and that axle is set directly on the bottom of that of the trailer box. There's no suspension. Those tires are really starting to get cupped out because it bounces down the road. It doesn't have a consistent, steady contact with the road. Okay. Again, you're going to look at your tires, visually inspect them for any issues. You may not have any of these issues, and that's okay. If you do have these issues, obviously you may need to get some things taken care of. So for all 4 tires, you're going to check the tire condition, visually inspect them, mark down any issues, and submit the lab. All right, so in this video, we talked through the basics of completing and submitting the tire maintenance lab. Now, tires are really important. They're a connection to the road, and if they're not working properly, our car is not going to be working properly. So we've got to make sure our tires are in good condition. Do they wear out? Absolutely, they wear out. Most tires will wear out within 50 to 60,000 miles on your car. And so we've got to understand when it's time to replace them. So today we looked at a few things. We looked at proper tire inflation pressures. Okay, helps maintain gas mileage as well as a good ride. Okay. Next, we looked at tire tread depth. Okay, proper tread depth ensures that we're safe going down the road. And lastly, we looked at different wear patterns. Tire wear patterns can be a good indication of other issues with our vehicle in the suspension system or in the alignment of the vehicle. Hopefully this has been helpful. At this point, go ahead and complete this lab on your vehicle at home. Submit the results, and we'll see you next time.